internationally. He does regular classes at the University of Sydney and has ijazah in many fields and specializing specifically in hadith. So the structure today would go 45 minutes to Brother Suvaid. After that, we'll give you guys a 10-minute break. And after 10 minutes, you guys there's an open Q&A. During that time, it's anonymous Q&A. Those in the audience watching at home can also send their questions through the number posed on the screen. And those of you in the audience, if you'd like to ask questions, your anonymous questions will be given to Brother Suvaid. So without further ado, I welcome our esteemed guest, Suvaid Siddiqui.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So the topic that I have to address is effectively interpretation, or what we call in Arabic ta'weed or ijtihad, and numerous things come into this topic. The hardest part of actually preparing for this is how you condense it, which I'll come to explain in a sec. But I asked for what exactly of these 7 topics should I address? Or not 7 topics, but these huge sort of topic I should address. And this following 7 questions came up. So what I'll do is I'll run through the questions, briefly explain what they mean, and then we'll take it in that way. So the 7 things I was given to talk about was the Quran and Hadith have been interpreted differently by different people. Right? So it's not like I say, Qala Rasulullah, kada, like so-and-so, such and such, and then all of you will agree as to every single detail about that particular hadith. And likewise for the Quran. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, why are there numerous schools of thought in Islam? Right? Everyone's aware of the 4 major madhahib. And some of you may be aware that there were many more. Right? According to some scholars, up to 500 madhahib existed throughout Islamic history. So why so many? If the Quran is one, Sunnah is one, why are there so many madhahib? That's question number 2. Question number 3, why does there seem to be disagreement in the fundamentals of Islam? Right? So we've got what's called the usul of the deen, the aqa'id, the matters around which our aqidah, our belief system is based. Why is there even disagreement in the actual fundamentals? That's an important question as well. And then number 4 is, extending from that, why do some groups accuse the other of being deviant? Why can't everyone just get along, instead of thing? Right? So you've got numerous sects in Islam. You've got Shia, Sunni, Rafidi, Barelwis, Deobandi, Salafi, this, that, all these terms, right? All over the place. And each one is calling the other one as someone who's mubtadi', he's a deviant, or munharif, is someone who does, or engages in beliefs, in a series of beliefs which aren't acceptable in Islam. So what's going on there? Why all the confusion? Why all the fuss? And then question number 5 would be, how can truth be assessed or accessed amidst so many claims to it? So obviously all these groups, they're not like, yeah, I'm deviant, I'm happy to be deviant, but you're a deviant as well. Obviously each group claims to be upon the truth, right? So how do we, as normal university lay people, navigate through such intense debates? Question number 6 is, fine, let's say you could do it. Let's say in theory someone could navigate that. How do we do it as non-scholars, right? Scholars are obviously expected to navigate through these things, probably come to some sort of reasonable conclusion, some well-informed conclusion. How do we, as normal university students, that aren't scholars, how do we do the same thing with scholars, or get access to the same truth that the scholars have access to, or potentially have access to? And the last question is, in reality, who is valid and who is not? So out of all these different claims to the haqq, to the truth, to the correct position, the correct Islamic aqidah, how do we, not just aqidah but in fiqh as well, how do we recognize what is valid and what is not valid? Right? So where do we draw the line? So these are the 7 questions which roughly I've been asked to address. Now when I looked at these questions, they effectively, all of them, they break down to 3 major topics. And these are the 3 I'll answer. See, each of these questions that I mentioned, literally books have been written on it. Like whole books have been written on each of these questions. Like you could probably do a semester-long course on each question. So it's a huge topic, massive topic, which I have to condense into like 40 minutes or something. So the best way to do that would be to break down all those 7 questions. They fit into 3 major themes, three major topics, right? The first topic, or the first major theme, is that why are there so many different interpretations in Islam? Why isn't there just one Islam, or one fiqh, or one madhab, or one fiqhi hukum on everything, right? Why are there so much ikhtilaf? That's the first way you could, I suppose, broadly categorize some of those seven questions. The second broadest way, the second theme you could look at would be, given that there are so many different interpretations, so put the reasons as to why they exist aside, the fact that they exist, how do you determine who is correct and who is not? Which one is valid, which one is invalid, right? That's the second major theme I want to look at. And once you have that answer, the third thing, which is the most relevant thing for us, the most relevant question for us would be, how can I access the truth? So the most important question that for all of us Muslims would be, in this particular topic, would be, how do I make sure that I am not someone who is upon an innovative Islamic position? Innovative not in a positive sense, in a bid'ah sense, right? In a khilaf, in the opposite to the sunnah sort of point of view, right? Or I'm not someone munharif, someone who is deviated away from the correct Islamic understanding on something, right? So that would be the most relevant question for all of us, right? Ideally, or not only that, but once you can answer that question, you can judge other people as well, in the sense that, okay, is what they're calling for, is what they're saying, is that something which is within a sound Islamic framework, or is it outside that sound Islamic framework? So these are the seven questions, these are the three major themes that I'll look at, right? So starting with the first one, probably I spent about 15-20 minutes looking at this, is why are there so many different interpretations and understandings on things in Islam, and not one universal understanding, right? So most of you are probably aware we have four major madhab, right? Each madhab has, according to the Hanafi madhab, Abu Hanifa himself passed around 1 million fiqhi positions, right? Almost 1 million. And likewise, that's Abu Hanifa. We've had almost 1200 years of development. So the corpus of fiqhi ahkam, fiqhi rulings, includes millions and millions of ahkam, of fiqhi positions on things. And not all of them obviously the same. So why are there so many different ways to understand things? Like, why doesn't everyone pray the same way? Right? People put their hands in different places, people pray at different times, people do different things in Ramadan, and they start and finish Ramadan different times. Why? What's going on here? Right? So the reason for that is actually quite straightforward when you look at when you understand the context behind it, is where do these fiqhi ahkam come from? Right? So for those of us that are Hanafi, just to demonstrate, Ahnaf, we in Salah, we put our hands below the navel like that, right? That's how Ahnaf pray. Shafis, they put it above the navel. Malikiya, they keep their hands on their sides, right? Hanbali's a bit all over the place, so I won't get into that. But why is this the case? Why doesn't everyone just pray the same? Like, what's going on? So, if I was to ask that question, what would you say? Like, why do you think there's difference of opinion? Right? The word for that in Arabic is ikhtilaf, difference of opinion. So the reason why there's difference of opinion is because these fiqhi ahkam, where do they come from? Do we make them up? Did Abu Hanifa make them up? Or did he feel like that's a comfortable position to put it below the navel? So let's just go with that's convenient. Or is there a more guided thought process going on? Right? Obviously the latter. So fiqhi ahkam, they come from the Quran and Sunnah. That's obviously very well known. They all come from the understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, and other sources as well, but we'll stick to Quran and Sunnah for now, because all the other ones come from that. So, if we understand that all the fiqhi ahkam come from the Quran and Sunnah, then obviously, given the fact that there is ikhtilaf, there must be, right, different ways to understand what the Quran or the Sunnah is saying. Right? What they're saying, there's different ways to understand that. And that's effectively the key reason why we have difference of opinion. How do you understand a word in a particular hadith? Right? How do you reconcile an ayah with a hadith if they seem to contradict? How do you reconcile two apparently contradictory hadith? How do you negotiate between a positive Islamic consensus and a clear-cut evidence which seems to contradict that particular consensus? Right? How do you deal with the fact that a hadith is saying X, but all the Sahaba did Y? Right? How do you sort of grapple with that? So it's in these discussions which we call usul al-fiqh, the principles behind fiqh, that all these differences of opinion occur, right? So what I'll do is I'll just go through very short examples as some of the, which touch upon some of the main reasons why this happens. So a great deal of a great contributor to the cause of difference of opinion is connected to the Arabic language, right? And with the Arabic language, the way, obviously we understand, we communicate meaning through language, and the way we understand what a particular message being communicated is saying will differ, or can differ, from person to person. So one example I've got here is there's a hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud which says, لا طلاق ولا إعتاق في الإغلاق. So there's no talaq, there's no divorce, nor i'taq, which is when you free a slave, fi ighlaq. In ighlaq, so I'll get to what ighlaq is, right? So that's what the hadith is saying. There is no divorce or freeing of a slave in a state which is this thing called ighlaq, right? So what is ighlaq in the Arabic language? In Arabic language, ighlaq can mean, as Sabuni mentioned in his madkhal, can mean two things. It can either mean intense anger, or it can mean coercion, right? So when we go back to the hadith, it's saying there is no divorce, nor a freeing of a slave in intense anger / coercion, right? The meaning, the word ighlaq can incorporate both meanings. So which one is it? Which one is Rasulullah telling us there is no talaq and i'taq in? Which one is it? See how, like, it's not enough to just say, look, this hadith, accept the hukm. Because what is the word ighlaq? What does it mean here in this particular in this context? It can't be both. So which one is it talking about? Some scholars, they said, okay, what's being referred to is intense anger. So if you're extremely angry and you pronounce divorce, it doesn't count. Some of the Shafi'i scholars said that. Other scholars said no, it's actually referring to divorce, coercion. So if you're coerced, ighlaq is in the meaning of ikrah, which is coercion. So if you're coerced to give a divorce, then the divorce is not counted, right? But see how, I mean, this is a straightforward example, but it gets much more complicated. See how the meaning of the word here, it inherently has a number of different meanings. And each meaning is plausible. And depending on how you understand which word you give preference to, which meaning you give preference to, the fiqhi ruling changed. If you said ighlaq meant anger, then the ruling which you extract from this particular hadith is that there's no divorce in intense anger. So if you pronounce a divorce in a state when you're intensely angry, then that doesn't count. But if you understood the word ighlaq to mean coercion, then what the ruling you extract from this is if you're coerced, then in that state of coercion, your divorce would be nullified. It wouldn't count, right? So things, when a word has multiple meanings, that's the way you understand which meaning you're giving preference to. That is one reason for which fiqhi rulings change. Another one also connected to the Arabic language is i'rab, right? I'rab is basically now when you study i'rab, it's basically identifying which grammatical state a particular word is in a sentence, right? So in Arabic, what determines what each word is doing is the grammatical state it's in. Because one structure, one thing which looks the same. Can I use a whiteboard? Would it come on the camera? Well, I'll just do it anyway. So if you have, for example, this word here, right? Fi'l. Fi'l in Arabic is a verb. This word can be fi'l, fa'ala, fa'ala, fu'ila, or fu'ila. And probably some other ones I don't know about as well. Right? So this one structure by itself can mean many different things. And this is true for like almost every word almost, right? So how do I know it's, for example, fa'ala? The verb, fa'ala, he did. That's i'rab would tell you that. I'rab would tell you, okay, this is actually fi'l madhi, this is a past tense verb, it's not a masdar, right? So this gets complicated when analyzing hadith in situations where the context does not make one meaning so clear, right? In one context, it may be absolutely clear that what's being referred to here is the verb and not a noun, because the context wouldn't allow for a noun to make sense in that particular sentence. But in some cases, it's not exactly that clear. So, everyone knows Ramadan is coming up, and everyone hopefully also knows after Ramadan, we do what? We fast 6 days in Shawwal, right? And it's as if you had the reward of fasting throughout the whole year. So the hadith in Sahih Muslim says, "Man sama Ramadan, ثم أتبعه ستة من الشوال, كان كصيام الدهر." So whoever fasts Ramadan and then follows it up with 6 min ash-Shawwal. Okay, so this is the key part. Min, you cannot see that, right? No? Okay, so forget that. This is key here, min, right? So min, according to most scholars of Nahu, or when they explain in their books, there are 4 types of min. Just in case your life wasn't hard enough, there's 4 types of min in the Arabic language. So in this issue of fasting 6 days in Shawwal, the scholars basically broke off into there's 3 opinions, but there's 2 major ones. Is it only in Shawwal? So you have to fast these days only in Shawwal, and that's it. If Dhul Qa'dah comes in, you can't do it anymore. Or is the starting period Shawwal? Right, so these are the 2 major opinions. Some scholars, primarily the Malikiyya, they said that it is the starting point is Shawwal. Right, starting point is Shawwal. Other scholars said no, it has to be from Shawwal. If it goes even a day into the next month, you don't get the reward. Right? So why is that? It all goes back to what kind of min this is. Min in English means from. Right? Literally the word from. That's probably the best translation. So in Arabic, there's many more than 4, but out of the 4 main ones, the 2 relevant here are called min of tabi'id, and the other one is intiha al-ghaya. So in one of them, it's like if I say intida al-ghaya, which is the beginning of a distance. So you know in English, I say for example, I came from Sydney Uni to Yunus W. So it's telling you the starting and end point of a journey of a particular distance, right? That's the one of the beginning and end point, right? The other one of tabi'id is like I ate from the dinner table, right? So that's more telling you that from a plate of food on a dinner table, you ate some of the food there, right? So some scholars, they said that this is in ibtida' al-ghaya, meaning that the Rasulullah is saying, as long as you fast from Shawwal to whatever, right? Then it's like you had the fast of 1 whole year. But because he doesn't mention the end point, it's indefinite. So Imam Malik gave the interpretation of a beginning point of something with an indefinite end point, right? So as long as you start in Shawwal, you can continue it throughout the rest of the year, no problem, right? The other scholars, they said no, this is actually tabi'id. It has to be, the 6 days have to be from Shawwal. So they said, okay, if you don't get it within Shawwal, you lose the reward. Right, so see the difference of opinion? It all goes back to what kind of mean this is talking about. And that goes back to what? The Arabic language. So Arabic language is one reason why there's difference of opinion. I can't just chuck a hadith at you and just force you to accept it. Because you might ask me, okay, fine, I accept the hadith, no problem, it's authentic. What kind of mean is that? Can you give me a hadith ayah in Bukhari or something said, the mean that I use in this hadith is actually of tabi'id. You can't do this, obviously no such thing, right? So where or how you understand what min that is, other evidences will come into play. You might quote pre-Islamic poetry to show that you can't use the min in this particular format, or whatever. You know, different scholars will have different reasons and arguments. But as far as analyzing what the Quran and Sunnah are telling you, Arabic language comes into play. And Arabic language isn't clear-cut always. There can be multiple different ways to validly interpret something. Right? And naturally born out of that are the different fiqh opinions that we have. So that's as far as the Arabic language is concerned. Another major reason why there's difference of opinion is connected to the science of hadith, right? and its related sciences. So ilm al-hadith is obviously a huge science. It's what they call, some of them in Malika, awsa al-ulum, the widest of the broadest of the Islamic sciences. It encapsulates about 96 sciences within it, as Suyuti mentioned in Tadrib, and some even counted more than that. So, what about hadith is so, gives rise to difference of opinion? So there are numerous, I mean, you could probably do like a whole year-long course on just, getting to the surface of it. But I'll just give 2 very quick examples. One is, every fiqhi issue won't have one specific, exclusive hadith to do with it. Right? The hadith, the one I mentioned earlier about putting your hands, that's got so many hadith, it's like, this is a big headache. So many different hadith, right? My friend was telling me he got a book from South Africa the other day, and he was flicking through it, and then one of his friends asked him about the witr prayer, and why the Hanafis say witr is wajib. So he opened up the book, he went to the index, he opened up the book, and then the author of that book, his name is Imam Tahawi, he brings over 103 hadith to prove that point. This one point of why witr is wajib in the Hanafi madhab. 103 are hadith. Right? So one fiqhi position may have hundreds and hundreds of hadith coming into play. Right? And it's not like any one mas'ala, you have one exact hadith which relates exactly to that particular mas'ala and seals it up in a way which there's no room for ambiguity. That's not how it works. A lot of the times, in fact most of the time when madhahib disagree, they disagree because there's two conflicting evidences. And the process by which they gave preference to one, led them to align themselves more with that particular position. So one example is a hadith of Tirmidhi, which says, إِنَّ فِي الْمَالِ حَقًّا سِوَى زَكَاةٍ. That indeed, in wealth, there is a haqq, a right due, apart from zakat. Right? In another hadith, it says, لَيْسَ فِي الْمَالِ حَقٌّ سِوَى زَكَاةٍ. There is no wealth, there is no right in your wealth apart from zakat. Right? So they're directly contradicting here. So how do you reconcile that? Right? Some scholars will say, okay, there is. Some scholars will say, no, there isn't. Some scholars will say, okay, this hadith is weak. Some scholars say, no, it's not weak, but it actually means this. Some scholars will say, okay, it's abrogated. There's a number of different devices in usul the scholars will use to reconcile these things. Right? But see how, like, it's not enough just to claim one hadith. If I asked you, hey, is there any haqq in my wealth apart from zakat? And you pulled out this hadith, have you solved the issue for me? No, you haven't. Because I say, well, what about this hadith, which directly contradicts what you're saying? Right? And you'll be right back to where the madhahib were, when they were grappling with this issue. So that's one example. Hadith seem to not contradict, but they apparently contradict. Although there's always a way to reconcile them. Another reason why there's disagreement is the authentication of hadith is a significantly disagreed upon process. Right? So how do we have a hadith? How do you know Rasulullah said something? Through what's called a sanad, a chain. Right? So for example, Imam Muslim narrates from Ya'la bin Ubayd, from Sufyan, from Amr bin Dinar, from Anas bin Malik, from Rasulullah who said that lil bayyani, for two people trading, they have khiyar, they have an option to rescind the contract if they're engaging in trade. Right? So how do I know the Prophet ﷺ gave us the option to rescind a trade contract? Then how do I attribute that to him? Because a chain of trustworthy people communicated that to me. Right? And they're known for their uprightness and piety. Right? But that assessment of uprightness and piety, sometimes there is difference of opinion. Right? That chain I gave you is a clear-cut chain. There's a minor issue, but it makes no difference. And it's a completely authentic chain. However, there are narrators in Islam who are unanimously agreed upon. Right? Like for example, Abdullah ibn Umar al-Umri. Some scholars like Yahya ibn Ma'in, Imam Ahmad said he is reliable. You can take hadith from him. Other scholars like Ali ibn Madini and Nasa'i, they said he's da'if. Right? So that's how you understand. I mean, like in that situation, who you go with, there's no divine wahi to guide you. Like it's not like there's an ayah in the Quran, Allah says, you know, oh you believe, take the hadith of Abdullah al-Umri. That doesn't exist. You have to make a determination yourself. Right? And that is going to be disagreed upon. Something disagreed upon is a process. And that will naturally, if you accept this hadith, it gives rise to numerous fiqh rulings. And if you don't accept the hadith, then it obviously detracts from taking rulings. And that gives rise to numerous differences of opinion. So that's the case. Right? That's the case in the sense that there is ikhtilaf for valid reasons. Is there invalid ikhtilafat, differences of opinion? Are there invalid reasons? Absolutely there are, right? So, before we get to that, let me just, before I frame how to understand difference of opinion, I don't want you to freak out either, like everything is just a big chaos, you know, big chaotic mess, and it's all disagreed upon, and no one knows what they're doing, and it's all subjective. None of that. Zahid al-Kawthari, one of the greatest scholars of the 20th century, a phenomenal hadith scholar as well as every other field, he said, he estimated that only about 20% of issues in Islam are disagreed upon. Only 20%. Right? So it's a very tiny fraction of Islam that's actually disagreed upon. And of that 20%, they all relate to minor fiqh issues. Like where do you put your hand? If I put my hand here or here, who cares? Like the guy's praying, right? Leave him alone. It doesn't really make a difference. It's not substantial. So it's usually these sort of 20% issues. So now those are acceptable, fine. nothing wrong with those sort of issues. There is a type of disagreement where it can lead you to become a kafir, a non-Muslim. And there's also a type of disagreement which causes you to become a deviant. Right? So what are we talking about? Khattabi, one of the great scholars of the 4th century, in a book that he wrote, Gharib al-Hadith, he mentions, what the summary of what he mentions is that disagreements in Islam, they have 3 possible outcomes. Right? So if you disagree, the idea of disagreements has 3 exhaustive possibilities. The first is kufr. So there are some things in Islam, if you disagree upon, you're a kafir. No questions asked. Right? Can any one of us disagree that Allah isn't the only God? There are other gods out there as well. Is that a valid position to have a disagreement on? Can I be like, oh, according to me there's 5, according to you 3, according to you 1, and then we can all get along fine? No, we can't. If there's disagreement on the tawheed of Allah, it's kufr. Right? Can we disagree that the Quran, there's parts missing? That, yeah, look, generally the scholars did a great job, but there's a couple of ajza missing. They got lost somewhere. Can we have that agreement? Can we have that disagreement? Can we have that discussion? No, we can't. That's clear-cut kufr. Right? So these are examples where if you disagree, it's kufr. Then there's examples of places where you're not allowed to disagree. But if you disagree, you're not a kafir. You're a deviant. Right? You're going to be punished for having that belief. You're not allowed to have that belief. You're not allowed to tolerate that belief. Right? It's called what's called the Mubtadi'ah, the innovators, who innovated something new into Islam which isn't actually from Islam. Right? A deviant sort of belief. And these are things like, for example, the Khawarij. Khawarij believe that the major sins in Islam, the kaba'ir, they cause you to become a kafir. Right? Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, inshallah all of us, we believe that major sins don't cause you to become a kafir. You're a sinner. You're a fasiq, not a kafir. They said no, it's something which is of a mas'ala of kufriyya. You become a kafir by perpetrating a major sin. Right? So if you hold that position that if you commit a major sin you're a kafir, that doesn't necessarily make you a kafir. You're holding a position which we can't accept from you, which is antithetical to the Islamic aqidah. It's something which is a deviant position to hold. But you're still within the fold of Islam. Does that make sense? So you're not fine, everything's not all good, but you're not a kafir, right? You're a mubtadi'. That's the second type. The third type is just the mubah, the permissible, right? These are the ones that I talked about before. About ikhtilaf, when you put your hands, when does Ramadan start, how loudly do I say taslim, do I say ameen bil jahr in the salah, at the end of the Fatiha, do I say ameen loudly or quietly? These things are fine. Right? In the adhan is takbir twice or 4 times, these are all fine, they all have solid evidences, Sahaba held these views, etc. So that's fine, you can hold whatever you want, I can hold whatever I want, and there's no issues there at all. Right? So in this particular domain, it's fine. So these are the 3 ways you can understand difference of opinion. These are the 3 consequences of disagreement. Right? Hopefully, all of us don't disagree that Allah is one. Right? So we're all Muslim. And hopefully also, inshallah, all of us are upon the correct Islamic understanding on, fiqh and aqidah matters. And obviously, we come from numerous different backgrounds. Some of us are Shafi'i, some of us are Hanafi, some of us don't follow methods at all. Could be fine, could not be fine, it's a debate, controversial. But, in this day and age, I suppose it's fine, right? So, by and large, most of us, hopefully, fall into this category, the third one, right? If you disagree that the Quran isn't complete, then you got issues, right? And likewise, if you believe that major sins cause you to become kafir, or something along these lines, some people said there's no qada al-qadar, that everything we do has been divinely decreed and coerced. So if I do that, that was divinely decreed. I have no control in that. I have no control over what I'm saying right now. You have no control in listening to me right now. None of us have any control. Right? So there was a sect called the Qadriyya, and also the Jabriyya as well. So they went and did zina and alcohol and all this, and they're like, oh, Allah decreed, I can't do anything about it anyway. So they denied free will. Right? That's not an acceptable, as tempting as it is for some people, it's not an acceptable position to hold. Right? That is contrary to the sound Islamic position and understanding. And then all of us, obviously, as I mentioned, we disagree in fiqh matters. That's fine. So, as far as understanding the issue of where disagreements and stuff lie, you can probably paint it like into 4 T's, right? So, you've got the bullseye, which is called al-matlub or as-sawab. Well, different scholars call it different things, which is the haqq, right? Then you've got the valid difference of opinion. Then you've got the invalid difference of opinion, which doesn't make you a kafir. It makes you a deviant. And then you've got the invalid difference of opinion, which makes you a kafir. Right? So this is like fine, this is fine, this is like wrong, and this is like super wrong. Right? Like you're finished if you're of that category. So these guys will eventually enter in Jannah. Eventually. Right? It's expected, obviously these are very universal things I'm saying, but all things being equal, these two are subject to Allah's rahmah straight away. Obviously, unless He exempts you. This guy, maybe, maybe not, we'll see. And this guy, there's no hope for that, right? So, what's this bullseye here? And this is the last part of the talk, which is, which one do we have to be concerned with? So, out of these, this one's clear, the kufr one. Right, kufr, inshallah, all of us are Muslims, and even if you're not, it's clear what the Muslims believe, right? Like no one's confused, oh, do Muslims believe God is one or five? Everyone knows Muslims believe God is one, right? So that's clear cut, we don't really have to concern ourselves with that. As for this one, the bullseye, the sawab, which is, some of you may know the hadith that when a mujtahid makes ijtihad, if he gets it right, he gets 2 rewards. If he gets it wrong, he gets 1 reward, right? So he still gets rewarded because of the sincerity of his effort. So out of Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, and Imam Ahmad, 1 or more got it right. They got 2 rewards, and the other people got it wrong. Right? So in the issue of Raf'ul Yadayn, which is in Salah, do you raise your hands when you come up for ruku'? Right? Either the Shafi'i's got it right, and he got 2 rewards, and Hanafi's got it once, because Hanafis don't do that. Or Abu Hanifa got it right, and did. And the other, so they get 2 rewards, and the other people get 1. But both of them are valid positions. We can tolerate the difference of opinion. But the thing is, that's not accessible to you and I. There's no way we can confirm. We can't call up Allah and say, wait, what do we do? Raf'ul Yadayn or no? Which one? What's the go? We can't do that. That will be revealed in the akhirah. Even that, some scholars say won't be revealed, right? Because it's redundant. But this one is out of our grasp. We don't have access to that. Right? That's with Allah only. So, our field of focus in understanding, answering the question of how can I know I'm not a deviant, or how can I know that I fall into somewhere here? We want to know, we want to fall into here. Right? This is where we want to be. So the question is, how do you know you're into this category? Right? So that, as I said, is out of our grasp. That's not really to do with us. That Allah only knows. And this one is fairly obvious. That means we're concerned with the second two. Of, is my opinion, how do I recognize deviation? Right? So how do I recognize the difference between Raf'ul Yadayn and denying al-qada wal-qadar? Right? The free will. Right? They're obviously two separate things. Even fiqhi positions. There are fiqhi positions you're not allowed to have. If you have them, it's deviant. Right? A lot of you probably know about the recent mufti who's denied the coming out of Isa alayhi salam. Right? That's not a valid position in Islam to have. That's deviation. It's not kufr, although some scholars said it is, but by and large it's not kufr, but it's not an acceptable position to have either. Right? So the question for us is, how do we tell a valid ijtihad, let's call it a sahih, a valid ijtihad, which you're allowed to follow, from an invalid one, which makes you a deviant? That's the key question we have to answer. Right? So just give you an example of an invalid fiqh position. So everyone knows Islamically, men are allowed to marry 4 wives. The Mu'tazila said you're allowed to marry 40. Right? Completely absurd stuff. Another one would be, everyone knows that Ramadan starts when Fajr starts. Right? You have to stop eating. Some scholars, rightly guided imams, major imams, they said it starts when Fajr ends. That's when Ramadan starts. Right? You know, and there's numerous such examples. There's a whole book section written on this, called At-Tafarrudat, which are the strange opinions scholars have held. Right? So, how do you know your opinion, what you're following is valid and not invalid? Right? What's the parameter? Because you have to have red lines. Right? If you don't have red lines, I can say whatever I want. Right? I think in the advertisement, something about ISIS was mentioned. In the in the blow. So ISIS claim to be Sunni Muslim. They appeal to Quran Sunnah. They accept as authentic what we accept as authentic. They read the same Quran that we read. Why are they going about doing really wacky things? Right? So what is so deviant about them? Likewise, Qadianis. Right? Likewise, they're largely Hanafi. Likewise, everyone knows examples of deviance. So why? What exactly made them deviant? If you speak to them, they make reference to Quran Sunnah just as much as we do. They quote Bukhari. ISIS people will quote Bukhari just as much as we do. I wasted so much time debating with them, and they just quote hadith after hadith after hadith after hadith. Right? So what's exactly the difference? So appreciate the problem. If you don't have red lines of interpretation, it's one thing to accept difference of opinion, right? But if you leave that unrestricted, then you open the floodgates to accepting anyone's opinion, and you have to accept it's valid. Right? So ISIS can go kill whoever they want, or do whatever they want with whoever they want, and they can be like, no, this is my ijtihad, you can't judge me, and I'm following my opinion. And you have to be like, fine, fine. Right? You have to kind of just walk away, right? Which obviously no one's going to do. So you have to draw the red line somewhere. There's lines, obviously, right? There's boundaries of interpretation, like the title suggests. What are those boundaries? So this is the boundary. It's called, in Islam, it's called, obviously this as well, by the way, is something which isn't agreed upon. Some scholars will say, no, this isn't the right boundary, it's this boundary. And there's details to this particular thing I'm about to tell you. But by and large, most of Islamic tradition and scholarship has subscribed to this particular idea. The idea is what we call ijma'. Right? Al-ijma'. Ijma' is consensus, agreement, right? And the reason why we say ijma', see in Islam we have 4 sources of ruling by and large that everyone agrees upon: Quran, Sunnah, ijma', and qiyas. Don't know what qiyas is, but ijma' is a source of law in Islam. If you quote a hadith to me, and I quote ijma' to you, we're at the same level of textual validity. We're at the same level. You can't be like, no, I quoted hadith, so you can't quote ijma' to me, I can. Right? And that's proven from the hadith itself. One such hadith, for example, is لَن تَجْتَمِعَ الْأُمَّةِ عَلَى الضَّلَالَةِ, that my ummah will never, the lan in Arabic is to negate any future possibility of. So my ummah will never gather upon dalala, upon misguidance. Right? So the converse meaning is, if the ummah won't gather upon misguidance, then what are they gathering upon? Who can figure it out? Guidance, right? If you're not gathering on misguidance, then if you gather upon something, it's probably correct. Well, not probably is correct. Right? It's not misguidance, therefore, because if you have haqq and batil, and you didn't land upon batil, then that means you landed upon haqq. There's no third option. Right? So, Islamic consensus will dictate to you the parameters of valid scholarly interpretation in Islam. So, for example, on the Nuzul of Isa alayhi salam, on the second coming of Isa alayhi salam, right? You can, theoretically, you can argue, and that particular individual I mentioned, he does, very compellingly, at some level anyway. He argues that the evidences are directly not suggestive that Isa alayhi salam will come back down again. Right? That's what he argues. And he has evidences. So, he has evidence. It's not like he's just making it up. He can claim evidence. Why? Who am I? Who are we, hopefully, all of us? Who are we to say that that's not a valid interpretation? He has evidence, we have evidence. So how am I disqualifying his evidence? On what basis? If we accept a difference of opinion. If he said, oh, our evidence is stronger, if he said that, for example, which many people do, then why can't I say the same thing about the Shafi'i madhab, or the Shafi'is about the Hanafi madhab? Right? Why can't I do that? So why can't I nullify the Shafi'i madhab? As much as I'd like to, I can't. Right? I'm compelled in following the Hanafi madhab, but also accepting the validity of the Shafi'i madhab. And likewise the Shafi'is with the Hanafis. Why? And if I'm agreeing them, if I'm accepting them as valid, Why can't I accept this particular individual as valid as well? The answer is this, ijma'. There has been a consensus of the scholars from the Salaf, the Tabi'een, the students of the Sahaba, all the way up until now, that every single Muslim must believe that Isa alayhi salam will come back out again. Ijma'. Right? So ijma' will paint for you the red lines. In everything, in anything, right? That Mu'tazila saying you can marry 40 wives, ijma' comes and says no, it's 4 only. You can't hold it. That opinion of Ata ibn Abi Rabah about the Ramadan starts at the end of Fajr, ijma' comes and says no, that's not valid. Right? About Raf'ul Yadayn. Is there ijma' that you can't or can do Raf'ul Yadayn? Or you must do Raf'ul Yadayn? No. There's no ijma'. Some scholars said you can, some scholars said you can't. Or no, they can't, but you shouldn't. Some scholars said you can't actually, they didn't say that. But everyone says it's a valid position to hold. Right? So, can I shut down the Shafi'i on the basis of ijma' and say your opinion is invalid? I can't. Because there's no consensus, right? Putting the hands in salah, above the navel, below the navel, sadr, as the Malikiyya do, along the sides. Is there an agreed upon position from the scholars, from the start to the finish, about where the hands go? No. Different Sahaba themselves practice in different ways. Right? All of these opinions go back to Sahaba. Right? So I can't do that. But did the Sahaba ever say, for example, that there are 7 prayers in Islam which are followed? If I came out of nowhere and I said, you know what, from now on, duha, which is prayed between Fajr and Dhuhr as a recommended prayer, from now on that's followed. Or you guys have to pray duha from tomorrow. Is that valid? No. Because the scholars have agreed, by consensus, there are 5 obligatory prayers. So ijma' will come and tell you, this is invalid, this is valid. This is acceptable, this is not acceptable. This is deviation, this is rightly guidedness, or whatever the word is, right? Ijma' will come and tell you that. So, how do you, and I've got a couple of quotes here as well, I'll just read them quickly, just so you know I'm not making them up. I'll just read them, because it's going to take a while to explain. So Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, who's one of the 4 leading later authoritative scholars of the Shafi'i method, he was asked, how do we identify the people of bid'ah? Ashab al-bid'ah. How do we identify them? He said, those who contravene, ijma'. So you can understand bid'ah relative to most Islamic scholarly consensus. Scholarly consensus, by the way. Right? Sorry to disappoint, but we're not relevant. This is the consensus of the ulama, not us. Right? So if all the ulama agree on something, then it is held to be something which you can't contravene. Likewise, I've got a number of quotes, but I don't have to go through it, I think. But I've got Al-Qarafi, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Ahmad, and many other people as well. It's there, trust me, it's there. I can send them to you if you don't believe me. Right? But that's basically how you can understand. So, I mean, you might go to, like, sometimes, I've experienced this many times, some people are confused. They listen to Mashayikh in everything, and they hold one thing to be true their whole life, and the Shaykh comes and contradicts that. It's like, oh, what do I do? Right? The simple answer is, check. Is it within Islamic consensus? Is there precedent for it? Right? If there is, no problem, follow it, as long as it's within consensus. If there's a consensus against that position, right? If someone is confused, I'm sure that followers of this particular mufti I'm talking about, I'm sure they're very conflicted right now. Because they've grown up believing Isa is coming back down, and this guy comes out of nowhere, he's like, no, he's not. So they're probably very conflicted if they're his student. If you were in that situation, how would you know? Ask yourself, is there a consensus of the Islamic scholars, of the Muslim scholars, on the fact that Isa is coming back down? If there is, that's the correct position. Right? One of these quotes here, Al-Qarafi, he said, it's not allowed for a mufti to give fatwa on something against Islamic consensus, nor is it allowed for someone to circulate an Islamic position against Islamic consensus. So that's your mechanism. Ijma'.
Right,
looks like we're out of time, so...
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Brother Subaid will be able to answer it. If you have any, if people on the live stream want to send questions, they can send it through. And if you guys want to raise your hands, make it more time efficient, then that can work also. Just leave it up to Brother Subaid.
Any questions from the floor?
Yeah. What is like definition of ijma? Like, is it like what percentage are we looking at? Is it from my own madhab or is it every scholar?
Yeah, good question. Something I think I should make clear is that the details surrounding ijma' are disagreed upon. Ijma' as a doctrine, as a facet of usul al-fiqh, is largely agreed upon, very few exceptions, but some details are disagreed upon, right? So when we say ijma', we're saying that it's the mujtahideen. So the mujtahideen are a particular category of scholars who have reached such a level of learning that they can independently extract their fiqh rulings directly from Quran and Sunnah and not have left anything out. Right? So, for example, if I was to come up with a fiqh ruling, I'd probably open up, probably the 6 books of hadith, go to a relevant chapter, find a hadith, and I'd start applying it. Right? Most of us, we have access to 6 books of hadith. Right? Dr. Mahir al-Fahal, he wrote a book compiling how many books of hadith there are, and he got about 786. Right? So 786 books of hadith you have to read before you can come up with a fiqh ruling. So once you get to that, and that's in hadith alone. So once you get to that level of learning, once you've gone through all these books, etc., you can start extracting fiqh rulings. So if these scholars agree, these mujtahideen, that gives you an idea of what caliber we're talking about. If these scholars agree, then that's whose consensus is relevant. Does that make sense? I'll just read one question up from the SMS. It says, how do you go about choosing the one that is more preferable, assuming there is a preference? Preferable in what? In ijma'? Oh, and sorry, ijma' means total consensus, right? Not like 9 out of 10 or 70% or 55%, total consensus. Absolute consensus. Yeah. I'm not sure what's being asked here in terms of preference. But the second question is it possible for one to become a mujtahid in this day and age? And if so, how does one become one? Yes, it's possible. As a Hanafi, I can't really say that, because we're quite anti-ijtihad, apparently. But it is possible. There are mujtahideen. I've spoken to them, and it's possible. In fact, Imam Suyuti wrote a whole book proving how Allah puts mujtahideen in every century. Right? And he gave evidences for that. And it makes a lot of sense because, well, it has to be the case. Because every age has new issues to deal with. If you got, does everyone understand what ijtihad is? I'll just explain what ijtihad is. Ijtihad is like, let's say there's only about 1,000 hadith which talk about fiqh rulings, right? They were present in the 7th century, or in the time of Rasulullah, right? Are we stuck within that time period? And that's it? Or is there a way, is there a mechanism by which we can make Islam relevant to us as well? So what's the hukum on, what's a modern thingy?
Cloning?
Cloning. What's the hukum on cloning? Are we allowed to clone or not? Is there a hadith that says, is there an ayah that says, you believe, do not clone? Anyone have such an ayah? Probably not. In fact, you have to say no, otherwise it's falling into that category. So, there's no such hadith or ayah. So what do we do? That's what you call ijtihad. Scholars will respond to a particular reality which is, generally speaking, unprecedented. That's ijtihad. So every century has, every age, new age, has issues which hasn't been dealt with before. There's a particular dynamic which hasn't been looked at before. So scholars will respond to that and make ijtihad and make Islam relevant to that particular reality. So yes, ijtihad is possible, and there are mujtahideen. Whoever asked that, I can send you like a list or something if you want. Someone asked, this is a good question, how do you verify ijma'? Alright, so if I'm like, there's ijma' that the Hanafi madhab is the best madhab, are you guys locked in? You can't say anything now? Is that set in stone? It is, but not for that reason. Ijma', Sheikh Muhammad Awama, one of the great contemporary scholars, arguably a mujtahid himself, that's one example for you, in hadith. He says that if someone makes a claim to ijma', there's one very, very, very simple way, one very simple thing you have to do to disprove it. Prove an ikhtilaf. That's it. So if I say there is complete consensus of the ulama that Isa alayhi salam is going to come back down, towards the end of times, and there's ijma' on that, all you have to do is show me a difference of opinion. Alright, that's it. All you have to do is demonstrate difference of opinion. There's only one condition though. the difference of opinion has to happen before the consensus occurred. So let's say in the 4th century, Islamic century, all the ulama agreed, there was a formal consensus of the mujtahideen that Isa alayhi salam is coming back down. So you can't quote to me someone from the 9th century, because that's post-consensus. If you wanted to disprove that ijma', was that necessary?
You just press the other.
If there was if you wanted to disprove that ijma', it has to be by a difference of opinion before the 4th century. Make sense? No? Yeah. Yes, so that's how you verify. If you don't like the ijma', go disprove it. If you can't disprove it, too bad. That's how it works. Are there boundaries in usul? Again, ijma' would be a boundary of usul. The good thing about usul, though, is that only the extremely orthodox, well-accepted imams formulated it. Right? The reason why, everyone knows Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali madhab. Right? Why can't I follow the Laythi madhab, Layth ibn Sa'd, great scholar? Al-Shafi'i said, Al-Layth ibn Sa'd afqah min Malik. Layth ibn Sa'd was a greater scholar of fiqh than Malik. Why can't I follow his madhab? Why can't I follow Sufyan al-Thawri's madhab? Sufyan bin Uyayna. Bukhari had a madhab. Right? Why can't I, arguably, why can't I follow these people's madhab? It's because their usul has been lost. And a chain back to the madhab has been lost. So it's really only the mujtahideen of the valid schools of fiqh to follow that formulated usul in the first place. So their entry point is a position of validity. Right? And most of the usul of the madhab goes back to a broader thought process of the Sahaba in the first place. Hanafi madhab goes back to the Kufa and Sahaba. Right? Ammar bin Yasir, Ibn Mas'ud primarily, Ali and others. Right? Imam Malik goes back to the Madani Sahaba, Zayd ibn Thabit, Aisha, Umar, etc. So it goes back to more synthesizing and refining a broader thought process that the Sahaba themselves had. So usul would generally be protected from these things anyway. Any other questions from the floor?
Oh yeah, for that question specifically, you said like most of these fiqh rulings are like those mujtahideen we can't follow because the chain is broken. Does that mean like is that the only boundary or is that the only ruling we can't follow those? Because is the chain the main purpose? We're not following
so why can't? So your question is why can't? Is the fact that there's no chain back to the Layth ibn Sa'd the only reason why we can't follow it?
Is that the only reason?
That reason gives rise to a number of problems, which then collectively come and prohibit you from doing that. So, for example, Layth ibn Sa'd, he was in the 2nd century, 3rd century Hijrah. His students died. His students, they didn't really carry on the tradition. He died very, very quickly. The only way we know Layth ibn Sa'd's opinions are in the comparative books of fiqh, right? Al-Mughni, Ilaq al-Mujtahid, Al-Muhalla, etc. These books. It said, وَقَالَ Layth, and Layth ibn Sa'd said this, right? That's the only way we know. So, how do you know what Layth ibn Sa'd will say about, for example, cloning? You don't have his usul. So we don't have the thought process that Layth ibn Sa'd used to arrive at particular fiqh rulings. So you can't advance the madhab. All you have are a bunch of isolated quotes, some of which are wrong and misattributed, of Layth ibn Sa'd, which is not enough to work out what his usul was. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why. And also, there are many fiqh opinions of his which are integral to prayer, to siyam, to our Islam, which we don't have. Because it's just forgotten or got lost or whatever. So that's another reason why. Let's take one from here. What do we as lay people do about new issues such as Bitcoin? That's a very, very tricky one. See, Bitcoin is a bit of a misconception because people don't differentiate between Bitcoin in terms of its permissibility as a currency, as a medium of exchange, and Bitcoin as an investment. Right? Investing in Bitcoin, putting money into Bitcoin, they're two separate issues. Right? The medium of exchange, That's a can of worms I'm not going to touch. Right? Investment, most scholars say you can invest in it. Right? There's a really good fatwa by Mufti Farazim Adam al-Mahmoudi. He's got about a 32-page book that he wrote about it. It's really good analysis. He's also trained in economics, so most people who talk about this have no idea what they're talking about. But he knows what he's talking about. And he says that as an investment it's fine, so I wouldn't recommend it though. I know 4 or 5 friends that invested like a number of thousands of dollars, they all lost their money. So unless you know what you're doing, so don't do it. But how do you address new issues? That was an example of Bitcoin. But basically, you do what scholars tell you to do. Right? So normally there's an issue, and a mujtahid somewhere out there will come up with a fatwa, and he'll say, this is my Islamic understanding on the issue, and you'll follow that, generally speaking. And there should be answers to most things that you come across. Anything from the floor? Another good question. Do I have sufficient scholarship to move from one madhab opinion to another? For example, if I want to pray the earlier fiqh opinion of Asr, I know I asked this. But follow the Hanafi usul, can I do that? Can I jump from one opinion to another? In short, lay people. See, there's 3 categories of people according to Sayfuddin al-Amidi, the great 5th century usuli scholar, in his book Al-Ihkam. He says there are 3 types of people with respect to usul al-fiqh. There's a layman, al-muqallidun, most of us, if not all of us. Unless someone here is a secret mujtahid, most of us are muqallidun. Number 1 is what he's called al-muttabi'un, al-ittiba', which I'll explain that in a sec. And the last one is al-mujtahid, the one who makes ijtihad. So the first and last is clear. What's al-muttabi'? Al-Amidi says al-muttabi' is someone who has acquired some of the knowledge required to make ijtihad, but is not the whole way there yet. So he's like in between. He's not a mujtahid, he can't go straight to Quran and Sunnah, but he's not a muqallid, because otherwise why is he acquired all that knowledge for? Right? He knows the principles of hadith. He knows the sound hadith from weak hadith. He knows what al-illa is in the hadith, a hidden defect. He knows the principles of usul al-fiqh. He knows khas and am and mutlaq and muqayyad and all that sort of stuff. He knows all these things. He knows the Arabic language very well. Right? So what does he do? So what he does is, he is allowed to make what's called tarjih, which is give preference to one particular fiqh opinion over another on the basis of what knowledge he has acquired. The reason why you and I can't do that is because we don't have that knowledge. Right? A lot of us don't know Arabic, so we can't even engage with the text. We can't have that debate of when does Shawwal, the 6th fast of Shawwal, because we don't know. For those who don't know Arabic, how are they supposed to tell, is this the min of tab'id, of someness, some whatever the word is, or the beginning point of something? We can't engage in that debate. We can't assess whether that narrator I talked about, Abdullah ibn Umar al-Umri, is he thiqa or is he da'if? We can't do that. We don't know where to go to find out these information. Right? Who's Nasa'i? Who's Ibn Ma'in? Right? If you don't know these questions, then you're not able to find out which narrator is authentic. So for us, what we do, our chain of submission to Allah is, the reason why you can't jump from madhab to madhab is, how do you protect yourself from whims and desires? Right? Now, there's 2 ways you can go from one madhab to another madhab. Either you make a premature jump from one madhab to another madhab on the basis of what would be ignorance, because you don't have the sufficient knowledge at this stage, or you just find it more convenient, and then you go back and justify it. I'm sure all of us have experienced this, right? People doing that. So either or, either you're making ittiba', you're making you're giving preference to one opinion over another on the basis of ignorance, which is not allowed, right? Because if you don't know Arabic, how are you going to determine that mean in that hadith was actually for Shawwal? Let's run that with that example. Let's say Ramadan happens, we all go through that. Shawwal, you're on your 5th day, and Dhul Qa'dah that begins, right? And you're like spewing, I missed out by 1 day. And you just jump from the Shafi madhab to the Maliki madhab. Why? Either you did it because whims and desires, not really whims and desires, but out of because you were too lazy before, so you want to compensate for that. Obviously no one's going to accept that. Hopefully not. Or you're like, oh, you know what? I don't know Arabic, but all of a sudden, Shafi's argument makes more sense. Well, how does it make more sense? You don't know Arabic. How do you prove that? Right? So that's why you can't do it on an evidential basis either. If you are a muttabi', you've learnt your Arabic, your hadith, all that sort of stuff, go ahead. The problem for you is not refining your intention. Right? But if you're at that stage, and all of us, inshallah, will get there at some point, then you go for gold. But otherwise, find a scholar, as Ashraf Ali Thanwi gave advice, find a scholar in whom you trust your deen and his religiosity. You trust his knowledge and his religiosity, and keep him as your constant reference point. Yeah. Any question from the floor? Because I'll take one more from here.
What if I want to follow Quran and Sunnah myself?
Well, you have to ask, are you muttabi or are you mujtahid? And if you're not, then you're muqallid. There's only three. There's no fourth category. It's one of the three.
There's a thinking from a certain part of the world where, you know, it's more preferable to follow the Prophet ﷺ himself rather than the four imams. Because four imams could be, they're not infallible, whereas Prophet ﷺ was infallible. So isn't it preferable to follow the Prophet ﷺ himself? It sounds quite convincing, so what would you say to that, bro?
Yeah, someone actually asked that, but I avoided it. The way I'd answer that is I mentioned, had you come early on time, you would know. The way you answer that is, it's not always the Prophet said. Like, it's not like, I can't just chuck a hadith on you and then you accept it. And the example I gave is the hadith Sunan Abi Dawud, لا طلاق ولا إعتاق في الإغلاق. There's no divorce or manumission of slaves in إغلاق. إغلاق can mean coercion or intense anger in Arabic. They're both plausible Arabic meanings. And they both fit in this context. Either there's no divorce when you're coerced, or there's no divorce when you're angry. I just chucked the hadith that you follow the Prophet now. Which one are you going to do? What are you going to do? So, and that's you. Imagine someone who doesn't know Arabic. If I just blow out a hadith, like you can't, when they say we follow the Prophet, what they're saying is we follow the Saudi translation of Bukhari. That's what they're saying, right? And trust me, there's mistakes in there. So, and that's not enough. You can't, like I said, only the 6 books of hadith and the Muwatta of Imam Malik has been translated. So out of the 786 books of hadith that are there, you're following 780. You're ignoring 780, you're following 6. So you're not following the Sunnah. Someone worked that out. How much that as a percentage? It's like 0.05% of Sunnah, right? So you're following 0.05% of the Sunnah. That's it. Because you don't even have access to that. So that's why you can't just follow the Prophet unless you're at a particular level.
What's a simple way to respond to others who have this thinking where they become so obsessed that unless we follow authentic hadith, Quran and hadith, as opposed to, you know, say that for madhhab, the tradition, what would be a simple layperson argument, as something that would grab their attention?
Just demonstrate the complexity in that.
Because you can get into like the details and the istilahat and the lugha, right? But then, you know, you'll lose them and they'll think you're kind of you're just trying to run corners. But what would be like a way to win them over in a basically a layperson way, in a simple in a language that they would understand, as opposed to like
I usually tell them that the Sahaba knew more than us. You have to accept that. That's in the Quran. It's also in Hadith. The Sahaba disagreed. Why didn't the Sahaba follow the Prophet? Right? Ibn Mas'ud didn't do Raf'ul Yadayn. Ibn Umar did. They're both Kibar Sahaba. So which one is following the Prophet? And that's just like there's huge camps on both sides. So if the Sahaba differed, they knew more Arabic, more everything than we. They saw the Hadith, right? We hear about it on a translation, on probably Google. They saw it. So if they couldn't identify one universal sunnah, how can we? And last question from here. This is a really good question, so I want to address this. Is, as a layperson, how do I access ijma'? Where do I start looking? I'm faced with an idea or a ruling and want to see if it's correct. Where should I look for the answers, resources, etc.? That's a good question as well. Because, again, ijma', the sources of ijma', navigating through false claims of ijma'. That is quite a scholarly thing as well. Effectively, if you do, there's a very long-winded Usuli question, answer to that, which I won't get into. The simple way to go about this would be, like I said, follow a sheikh who's well-known. There are many of them, right? Everyone has a sheikh that's well-known, right? Follow one of the well-known, trusted mashayikh, known for his piety. Follow him. If there's anything fishy, right? It's like, oh, are you sure about that? Look for a consensus, right? Because usually these things happen. These things are usually to do with grey areas, right? Things which are really, really controversial. voting, for example. What's another one?
Smoking.
No, smoking, there is ikhtilaf, surprisingly.
Ikhtilaf.
ISIS was a big one, right?
ISIS.
In fact, that's a really good example. ISIS, why is ISIS wrong? There is ijma. There is ijma. Salih ibn Najib and many scholars declared ijma. And but I used to have a lot of, there was a particular supporter in Sydney Uni, and not anymore. He hates him now. But he was going around convincing people of ISIS, right? So I had to debate him a number of times, and I asked him, I told him ijma. I said this point, I said, because ISIS, the condition of ISIS wasn't as clear now, it wasn't as clear as it is now back then. Back then it was very confusing, right? So I said, look, there's ijma. If you disagree, find me any scholar on the face of the planet that agrees with ISIS. And 7 months later, he called me, he's like, bro, I found one. I'm like, who? And he's like, this guy. I'm like, he wasn't a scholar, some like random graduate, right? So, and then like a couple months later, I was like, okay, fine, you're right. So that's how much so find a scholar you trust, in whose knowledge you have confidence. He's not some graduate, some half-baked guy. He's a well-trained mashayikh, well-accepted, well-acknowledged by his contemporaries, right? Other mashayikh refer to him as a shaykh. And in whom you have faith in his Islamic practice. That mufti, those who know that denies the nuzul of Isa, no one can critique his scholarship. He studied in some very impressive institutions. But a lot of people critique him for the other component, right? In terms of, you know what I'm talking about. So, make sure both criteria are there. If that's the case, stick to him. If there's something really, really fishy, then go around asking other shaykh, right? Other people on the other side of the fence. Ask him, Sheikh, do you know of a consensus against this particular issue? That's probably the best way to start.
Okay, so Jazakallah khair for coming here today, and we just got you on the present. I'd like to thank everyone for coming here, those on the live stream, sticking it until this point. I mean, props to you, take my help. But anyways, Jazakallah khair. Thank you for your questions, thank you for rocking up and supporting us. And gentlemen, let's all wait for the gentlewoman to leave. And inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.